You know, if you ever visit the House of Commons, one of the very first things you notice is that the desks, they're literally bolted to the floor.
Yeah, they really are. It's quite striking.
Right. Like, it's this ultimate physical manifestation of how we usually think about government architecture.
Hmm.
You know, you run for a party, the voters elect you, and you sit exactly on the side of the room the voters assign to you.
Exactly. The physical space completely mirrors the partisan divide. You're either the government or you are the opposition. There's this rigid aisle between you, and, well, you just do not cross it.
But then you look at the sheer, just the brutal mechanics of modern parliamentary power, and suddenly those bolts start coming loose. The architecture literally shifts right before your eyes.
It really does.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are taking you into an absolute masterclass in high-stakes political maneuvering. We've got a massive stack of sources from April 2026. We're talking news articles, columns, intense political commentary, and it's all detailing a seismic shakeup in Ottawa.
A huge shakeup, yeah.
Yeah. Longtime Conservative Member of Parliament Marilyn Gladu has just crossed that rigid aisle to join Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government.
Which is, I mean, it's wild.
It's totally wild. So our mission today is to unpack the precise parliamentary math, the immediate political fallout across, like, every major party, and what this actually reveals to you about modern political strategy.
But just a quick explicit note before we get into the weeds here. Our stack of sources today is highly, highly polarized.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we're looking at furious op-eds and statements from right across the political spectrum, left, right, and center.
Yes, very important point. We want to be completely clear with you, the listener, right up front. Our role here is not to take a side.
Right.
We are not endorsing any of the viewpoints or the political maneuvers we are about to discuss. We are purely here to impartially explore and report the factual details, the direct quotes, and the arguments contained in the source material.
Exactly. Just simply so you can map out the battlefield and understand exactly how this situation works. We're lifting the hood to look at the engine.
Yeah.
Telling you which way to drive.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the immediate facts of this floor crossing trigger this fascinating high-stakes numbers game in the House. We are talking about Marilyn Gladu.
Right.
She is a veteran four-term MP for the riding of Sarnia, Lambton, the Quechewang. And this move, it's not happening in a vacuum. She is actually the fourth Conservative to defect to the Liberals just since November.
Wow.
Yeah, joining Matt Genereux, Chris D'Entremont, and Michael Ma. And if you include the NDP's Lori Eichlout, Gladu is the fifth opposition MP overall to jump ship to the government benches.
Which brings us to the math. And, you know, in a minority parliament, the math dictates absolutely everything.
It does.
By bringing Gladu over, the Liberals now hold 171 seats in the House of Commons.
But 172 is the magic number needed for a functional majority, right?
Right.
So they are quite literally one single seat away from total control. Hold on there. At 171 seats, if there is a tie vote in the House, the tiebreaker falls to the Speaker of the House, Francis Scarpelleja.
Correct.
And he is a Liberal. So wouldn't he just, rubber stamp the Liberal bills to break the tie? That gets them their 172 functionally, doesn't it?
Well, you would think so, but parliamentary tradition is actually incredibly rigid here, and it operates totally counterintuitively.
Really?
Yeah, the Speaker doesn't just put on his team jersey and vote for his party's legislation. By longstanding convention, the Speaker must vote for the status quo.
Meaning what, exactly? Like, how does voting for the status quo actually play out when a massive piece of legislation is on the floor?
It means the Speaker's primary job in a tie is to keep debate alive, but never to finalize a change in the law without a clear democratic mandate.
Oh, interesting.
So during the early stages of a bill, say the first or second reading, the Speaker will vote yes to keep the debate going. They keep the bill breathing.
Right.
But when it finally comes to the crucial third reading, the final hurdle before it becomes law, the Speaker will traditionally vote no.
Wait, really? They vote no on their own party's bill?
Exactly, because passing it at that stage would actively change the status quo of the country.
I see. So at 171 seats, the government can survive a confidence vote to keep the lights on, but they can't actually pass controversial legacy-defining legislation.
Exactly. To get a full functional majority where they don't have to sweat every single vote and where they don't have to rely on the Speaker's highly restrictive tie-breaking rules, the Liberals actually need 173 seats.
Which perfectly explains the intense urgency of this exact moment, because this coming Monday, there are 3 crucial by-elections happening.
Yes, very crucial.
2 in Toronto, that's University Rosedale and Scarborough Southwest, and 1 in Quebec, in Terrebonne. A win in any of these could mathematically cement that majority.
Yeah, any single one.
Think of a minority government like running a power grid at 99% capacity. It is exhausting. Any slight breeze, like a sick MP or a delayed flight, causes a legislative blackout.
Oh, absolutely.
So by crossing the floor, Gladu isn't just adding a seat, she's giving the Liberals baseload power. They are trying to bypass the chaos. It's like a sports team making a massive, highly controversial trade right before the playoff deadline, just to mathematically clinch the pennant.
That's a great way to put it.
But I have to ask, is this just a cynical numbers game, or is there a genuine ideological shift happening here?
Well, the expert analysis really points to it being a numbers game that highlights the vulnerability of a minority government. They're trying to bypass that chaos of relying on opposition votes, but the math is only half the equation here.
Right.
Because achieving that number required Prime Minister Mark Carney to bring in a politician who has spent the better part of a decade fighting against almost everything the Liberal Party historically stands for.
Right, and that perfectly transitions us to the enigma of Marilyn Gladu herself. Because when you look at her resume, this is a highly unorthodox political marriage.
It really is. To understand the profound friction here, you have to look at the 2 very different sides of Marilyn Gladu. On one hand, you have the ultimate pragmatist.
Okay.
Before she entered politics, she spent 21 years as a professional engineer at Dow Chemical.
Wow, 21 years.
Yeah, and she oversaw more than 250 chemical plants globally. You don't get to that level without being ruthlessly focused on logistics, spreadsheets, and results.
Oh, for sure.
And she has a documented independent streak. For example, she actually opposed former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper's decision to cut the long-form census because, as an engineer, she valued the data.
That makes sense. But then you turn the page to her more recent political history, and the ideological clashes are just glaring. The sources are filled with her controversies.
You really are.
Like, she promoted unproven treatments for COVID-19. She publicly compared COVID to polio. She was a vocal, visible backer of the 2022 Freedom Convoy in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And back in 2018, she made derogatory comments implying Mexican visitors to Canada were involved in the drug trade. And crucially, on the legislative front, she voted against a Liberal bill banning conversion therapy, though the sources do note she later issued a statement claiming she vehemently opposes the practice.
Right, there's some backpedaling there.
Plus, she went on record saying she would allow party members to introduce private members' bills to restrict abortion.
And what's fascinating here is how Prime Minister Mark Carney is attempting to navigate this exact minefield. He is actively choosing to highlight the engineer and entirely ignore the ideologue.
Yeah, classic political pivot.
Exactly. The sources show Carney leaning heavily into her corporate resume. He praises her decades of business experience and her collaborative nature. But he knows the massive liability she presents to his progressive base.
Of course.
So he drew a very hard line in the sand on social issues. Carney stated unequivocally that she must vote with the Liberal government on abortion and LGBTQ rights.
He used a very specific phrase, didn't he?
He did. He said, unity doesn't mean uniformity, but insisted that core Liberal values do not change.
So what does this all mean? I really have to push back on Carney's logic here. If a party champions a big tent philosophy but immediately forces a newly acquired member to check their deeply held beliefs and their past voting record at the door,
Right.
is that actually ideological alignment, or is that just a transactional gag order in exchange for power? Because how does that even work practically? Does she just abstain from voting, or is she forced to physically stand up in the House of Commons and vote against her own previously stated beliefs?
The latter. She will be whipped to vote with the government.
Wow.
Yeah, and it raises exactly the question that political observers across the country are debating right now. It questions the fundamental nature of what a political party is supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Is a party a club of shared morals, where everyone operates from the exact same philosophical baseline? Or is it simply a legislative vehicle? A corporate structure designed solely for acquiring and exercising power? Carney is basically treating the Liberal Party less like a church and much more like a corporate board.
And because he's doing that, the shockwaves are tearing through the leadership of every other major party in Ottawa. Let's look at the fallout, starting with the Conservatives.
Oh, the fallout is massive.
Leader Pierre Poilievre came out swinging immediately, accusing Carney of using backroom deals to fabricate a majority that the voters explicitly denied him at the ballot box.
And Poilievre was quick to weaponize Gladu's own words against her.
Oh, this part is wild.
It is. He pointed out the sheer hypocrisy of her move by bringing up a quote from just this past January, where Gladu herself publicly stated that MPs who cross the floor should be forced to resign and face a by-election.
That's a brutal quote to have dug up.
So the voters would have the final say, yeah?
But Poilievre isn't just on the offensive. He is actively fighting fires inside his own house. You have to look at the internal panic this causes. Losing 4 MPs to the sender in a matter of months is a full-blown crisis of caucus management.
It really is.
The sources report his communications director, Katie Merrifield, is resigning amidst this. And then you have Dimitri Soudis, who is a top, highly influential aide to Stephen Harper, publicly stating that the defection of a true blue conservative like Gladu seriously weakens Poilievre's leadership.
Yeah, that's not just a pundit talking.
No. That is the old guard of the Conservative Party sounding the alarm about the current leader's ability to hold the center-right together.
Meanwhile, if you look to the other side of the political spectrum, the NDP is aggressively seizing this moment.
Oh, big time.
Avi Lewis recently won the NDP leadership, and he is stepping onto the national stage in a moment of profound personal and political intensity.
Right.
He decisively won the leadership race and then tragically lost his father, the legendary progressive political figure Stephen Lewis, just days later. So he is operating with immense emotional and historical momentum.
And Lewis is using that momentum to completely attack Carney's big tent defense. Lewis fired back that Carney's tent is now as big as the entire political spectrum.
That's a great line.
He is strategically using this floor crossing to ask progressives a very pointed question. What does it even mean to be a liberal anymore if the party welcomes an MP who actively voted against a conversion therapy ban?
Exactly.
Lewis is essentially claiming the progressive left for the NDP, framing them as the only genuine, ideologically pure alternative left in Ottawa.
And you see the Bloc Québécois applying the exact same pressure,
Yeah.
tailored for their audience.
Yes, the Bloc.
Leader Yves-François Blanchet asked a brilliant wedge-driving question. If you were a progressive liberal in that caucus, who the hell is talking for me now?
Wow, that's sharp.
It is. Blanchet isn't just offering commentary. He is actively trying to poach disillusioned Federalist progressives in Quebec by highlighting the Liberal Party's shift to the right.
Think of the entire political spectrum right now like a tightly stretched rubber band.
Okay.
By aggressively pulling the Liberal Party so far to the center-right just to capture these pragmatic conservative defectors, Carney is stretching the ideological tension of his own party to its absolute limit. And the danger is he might snap the entire progressive wing of his base right into the lap of the NDP and the Bloc.
It is a massive strategic gamble. This single defection acts as a catalyst for an identity crisis across the entire board.
Completely.
The Conservatives are bleeding moderates and questioning their leadership. The Liberals are alienating their progressive base to achieve mathematical dominance. And Avi Lewis, a newly energized NDP, staring at a massive, wide-open lane on the left. The political calculus for every single party just changed overnight.
But, to truly understand why a politician like Marilyn Gladu would risk angering her base, alienating her former colleagues, and making herself the center of a national firestorm, we have to look away from the Ottawa bubble. We have to examine the pragmatic local motivations on the ground. Let's look at Sarnia.
The local angle is where the abstract philosophy of politics hits the harsh reality of municipal needs.
Right.
In Gladu's writing, there is undeniable anger. Constituents are organizing protests outside her office, holding signs, and echoing her own past words by demanding a by-election. They feel betrayed.
Of course they do.
One constituent explicitly told reporters, "We voted for a conservative government. This liberal has no business being here."
But then you look at the local leadership, and it's a completely different tune. Sarnia Mayor Mike Bradley offers a purely pragmatic perspective. Sarnia is a major energy and chemical hub. Bradley doesn't care about the color of the team jersey. He sees a massive opportunity. He knows that having a local MP sitting on the government benches means the region might finally get the attention and the infrastructure dollars it's been desperately asking for.
And Gladu herself leans heavily into this pragmatic transactional defense. She pointed out that Sarnia used to be a bellwether riding, receiving plenty of government support when it voted liberal in the past.
Yeah, she was very open about that.
She is openly admitting the quiet part out loud. It is simply easier to get funding when you aren't shouting from the opposition benches. And she revealed a fascinating, very telling detail about the timeline of this deal.
Oh, this is the best part.
She had previously sent the federal infrastructure minister, Gregor Robinson, a list of urgent local needs. When she was a conservative, that list went nowhere. It just vanished into the void.
Yep.
But after she agreed to cross the floor, she immediately got a text back and a call from his office to set up a meeting.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, because that is the definition of pure transactional politics, and it highlights the unique management style of Mark Carney. The commentary from Paul Wells in our sources really illuminates this dynamic. Wells compares Prime Minister Carney to an OECD trustee in a tailored suit from London.
It is a devastatingly accurate observation of how Carney operates.
Yeah.
Wells argues that Carney is focused almost entirely on macroeconomic results. He cares about productivity, investment targets, and execution. And in doing so, he completely ignores what Wells calls the traditional karaoke night rituals of Ottawa partisanship.
Right, the karaoke night rituals, like the tribal loyalty, drinking at the same bars with your partisan colleagues, the unwritten emotional rules of who you are allowed to work with and who you are supposed to hate.
Exactly. Carney doesn't care about the social club.
He really doesn't.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Carney's approach is fundamentally stripping the emotion out of politics. He isn't recruiting friends. He's acquiring human capital.
Human capital, that's exactly it.
When he evaluates Marilyn Gladu, he doesn't see a political rival with a messy history of protests. He sees an engineer who knows how to manage 250 chemical plants. He sees a highly competent project manager who can help execute his complex nation-building infrastructure agenda.
Right.
He is treating her past political baggage as an acceptable acquisition cost to get elite talent running the government.
So, if Carney is acting like a turnaround CEO rather than a traditional tribal politician, does that mean the era of the deeply ideological, values-first politician is over? It feels like we are moving into an era of pure, ruthless pragmatism.
It definitely feels that way.
It's like a corporate acquisition. You buy the rival company because you need their patents and their supply chain, even if you absolutely despise their corporate culture. But you force them to sign an ironclad contract saying they will play by your rules from now on, which is exactly that mandatory agreement Carney forced on Gladu to vote with the liberals on abortion and LGBTQ rights.
It is a highly calculated, albeit cynical, risk. Carney is betting the House that voters, at the end of the day, care more about bridges being built, trade deals being signed, and the economy growing than they do about the partisan purity of the people pushing the buttons in Parliament.
Yeah.
He believes competence will override ideological consistency.
Which brings this entire deep dive right back to you, the listener. We've just watched how a single MP's defection illuminates the hidden edge case math of parliamentary majorities. We've seen the severe ideological compromises required to secure and maintain power.
A lot of compromises, yeah.
And we've explored the intense tension between representing your local riding's desperate need for resources versus maintaining loyalty to a national party brand. It really forces a question about your own experience as a voter. When you step into the ballot box, are you voting for a rigid set of moral ideals? Or are you voting for a representative who will ruthlessly negotiate and even switch teams mid-season just to bring money and resources back to your hometown?
It is the ultimate enduring conflict between ideology and pragmatism. Do you want a representative who is pure or a representative who is effective?
Exactly. But it leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up.
Okay.
If floor crossing becomes a normalized, entirely acceptable tool for minority governments to slowly piece together a majority between elections, does it fundamentally break the democratic contract?
Oh, wow. It's a profound question to leave on.
Right.
Because it shifts the ultimate power of choosing a government away from the voters at the ballot box. It places that power entirely into the hands of backroom negotiators, party whips, and individual politicians looking for a better deal.
It means that rigid architecture we talked about at the very beginning, those desks bolted to the floor, the foundation poured by the voters on election night isn't solid at all. It turns out the walls can be unbolted and moved in the middle of the night as long as the political math adds up. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.